So the French open up the second impulse with a revolt in Ireland. This is a big card to play. It's now permanently discarded from the game, and that's one of the normal types of things with some of these events in the card-driven games. But what it does is it grants them 3 territories in Ireland and a good shot at the Key of Dublin. By doing this, the French are making that English surrender more likely. Now, the difficulty with this, the pain in the butt about this, is that this card is discarded if the English regain all their Irish spaces. So, unless Ireland is granted some sort of freedom in the peace process, they're going to actually fall. And that kind of gets rid of this card in that way. I think it was worth it. It's one of the things that helped me decide, hey, I'm going to go for England. Between the naval battle and the Irish revolt, I thought that would be a good combination. All right. On the English impulse, they spent a card to buy a leader. And this starts something new that we haven't seen yet, an army group. They're more expensive to move. They cost 1 per army contained in the group, and essentially an army group has to have at least 2 armies in it. So there is an army led by Moore, the original leader, and now I've added Beresford, spent a 4-point card to build him. And the idea here is I'm going to try to challenge Napoleon for control of London. If I can kind of force the French to fight in Britain, maybe I can prevent a surrender. That's the hope. And as the Brits are able to build up forces, well, here's the problem. Moore could only move 4 units the way he was before. Now he can move his 4 units and 4 units under Beresford. And Moore has a pretty decent command rating, not great, but enough to make it plausible that he can he can actually take Napoleon on, assuming the Brits have some decent cards, or maybe some of their allies can help them out. Anyway, they're going to take a shot at this. Okay, after another round. I think we covered up to the Austrians. The Russians moved up and grabbed Munich. Oh, I don't know if we did cover the Austrians. They played refugees and emigres or something like that, and got kind of a cheap leader and troop over in Vienna, just to strengthen their position. The Russians moved up to Munich. Prussia continued building, getting another leader. Sorry about the jiggling, I was scratching. And most of the miners increased their standing. Well, no. Turkey increased its standing. It had a card and an extra point. It actually had a big card, so it got 6 points of stuff. Sweden and Denmark didn't get to do anything. Spain built another leader and moved into La Mancha. What are the chances of taking Gibraltar? Pretty low, but if they can get an army group together, they might be able to do it. That's it. So here in the third round, the French started spreading out and grabbing keys in England, and I moved down here towards Naples to try to gather that one as well, just trying to weaken that English position. Now, as we see, the English moved that big army group. They played a 5-point card, and they used 4 of the points, 2 to build a strength point, and added to that army group, and 2 to move the army group because it has 2 leaders. Well, it has 2 armies essentially. One, the main one, under Moore, which is that strength point there, and the other one, Beresford stack, which can be commanded by him. Moved in to take Napoleon. The unit next to failed the one in Wales failed to intercept. And then the Brits dropped 2 cards, a leader wounded and a lost dispatch. The lost dispatch is going to remove a number of strength points from Napoleon's army, and the leader wounded has a chance of removing the Napoleon effect from it, which might just allow the Brits to win this battle. I'll be back after it's done. So after the dice have been rolled, the results were: the British caused 3 casualties to the French caused 2 to the British, and 3 disruptions, which means the French are going to win this battle and drive the British back. So Napoleon loses 3 strength points. Whoops. Hard to see what I'm doing. Moore has to fall back, and he loses 2 strength points. And that's gonna leave him with, let's see, troops that he no longer has to be an army group, so he can move a little quicker. So Austria used their special big 6-point reserve in order to chase, sorry about that, for Charles to chase Messina, and he marched through Milan, picking up a key, down through Genoa, Tuscany, into Rome. Barely lost the battle. It was a 2-round battle. They both had the same total casualties, and because of that, the French ended up holding the territory. The actual losses, the French took less losses than the Austrians, but disruptions count, which is why it ended up being even. That meant Charles's army had to face an attrition roll because they didn't own Tuscany yet, but then they used the final point to flag Tuscany. So Kutuzov marched into Zurich, and there was an interception by Lannes. Using a big conscripts card, they used 3 of their movement, flagged, whatever this is, Württemberg. The Prussians threw a card in, turncoats, which made Lannes' forces roll attrition. 2 units were lost. That gives +2 dice for every round of combat to the Russians then. And the overall effect was pretty close. It was 2 rounds of battle, because there was a tie in the first round, and both sides lost 3 units, but there was 1 extra disruption. So the Allies win. Kutuzov is able to defeat Lannes, and Lannes will be pushed back. By the way, a little earlier, Moore made another attack and lost again. We're seeing the French gathering up what they have. Alright, so Lannes will be taking 3 losses and withdrawing up to here into Baden. And Kutuzov will also be taking 3 losses, which will drop him to a 2. And that's all we got there. So we're down to just France and Austria having cards left. France has already played theirs. They flagged Edinburgh and marched down into Naples, drove the English away, they evaded, and then they flagged Naples as well. That leaves Britain with only 1 key left, Gibraltar. And now we're going to see the Austrians go, and basically, yeah, they each have 2 cards, so I think they all have to play them. I'll look at that as I go. Okay, so the French resolved their conquest of England. That was successful. They got a 3 in terms of total duchies gained, and in addition to all the minor associated duchies or whatever that they'd conquered, Naples, the Irish territories, they took Gibraltar, which is of course very good. The British handed them Oporto, which they gave to Spain, and then they took Edinburgh. So they got 2 keys out of it. Everything else has been relocated. There's 1 British unit in the regroup box from Gibraltar. And now we go to the end of game roll. Now, calculating out the victory points, the French got an extra resource. France and Russia are tied. France decided not to spend anything. No one else spent anything. Russia spent a victory point to try to end the game because this is done in reverse order of movement. So if the game ended right now, Russia would win. They made a roll. They didn't get a 5 or a 6. They're going to be down 1 card for the next turn because of this. So here we are at the beginning of 1807. Prussians entered the war as part of the coalition. The British are, of course, a subject nation. What do we got? Well, one of the things we've got is more army groups on the board. After the builds and reorganizations, we're seeing the forces consolidating, especially Kutuzov and Napoleon's move down from Britain into Baden. New leaders like Ney are on the board. The Germans, the Prussians built an army group in order to enter the war. In addition to that, the French, they didn't like their initial hand, so they mulliganed. Gives them 1 less card. This is something you can do on any draw, basically. Anytime you get a between turns draw or the beginning of the game draw, you can say, I want 1 less card, and I'll keep whatever I got, or I can just keep mulliganing and getting less and less cards as I go. And the English, because they're a subject nation, didn't have a lot of cards coming to them because of their horrible position in terms of total number of keys. Half your keys determine your cards. The Russians are down 1 because they tried to end the game early. But the English, because they're a subject nation, have the ability to discard their entire hand and draw a maximum size hand. They also lose their reserves for this, and they get some sort of random semi-reserves. People don't know what they can do now. That's kind of cool. I'm actually really enjoying this. I had real misgivings about this game when I read about it elsewhere. It wouldn't be heavy enough. It wouldn't be realistic enough. I'm pretty damn happy with what I'm seeing. It's certainly at a lighter level than most of my other Napoleonic games, but I think it's on about the same level as Here I Stand. I don't think it's quite as interesting, just because I really love the religious rules for Here I Stand, but the diplomatic rules for this are very interesting. Some of the hand manipulation rules for this are very different from how most CDGs work. So you're able to play around with your turn order and such not by playing with your hand size. I like that aspect. There's just some really interesting little quirks to this system that make it very interesting to me. And help move along the fact that it is this fairly high-level light game where counters just have a number on them and that's how many troops they are. Alright, I'm going to load this one up. That's the end of turn 1.